Hey, it's Aaron. Today I'm with the 2022 Mercedes GLS. So Mercedes-Benz makes the GLS as pretty much their largest SUV. It is a big three-row. It is aimed towards comfort and style and roominess, whereas the G-Wagon, as we would call it, is aimed more towards social cred and off-road capability. Hey Mercedes,
How can I help?
tell me a joke.
Why did the tomato blush? Because it saw the salad dressing.
So this in particular is the 450. There are several models above this. This is the base model for this. After this you get into the AMG variants. This has a supercharged 6-cylinder engine. The other two or three after this, I think there's three because there's the Maybach. So the other three after this are all V8s with various turbocharging and power outputs. For my money, honestly, I would go here. Unless you think you need a muscle car of an SUV, this is more than enough right here. It's beautiful to drive. We hauled 6 of us, so we had this thing filled with people, plus all their stuff, and went on a road trip. It's about 3 hours each way, family road trip to go to a little get-together, and this thing was awesome. You got heated and cooled seats, you have plenty of room in all seating positions, you got pretty decent fuel economy, honestly, and you have every comfort you can name, and it rides smooth, etc., etc. It's a wonderful, wonderful SUV. Of course, it's not cheap, so let's talk about it. Let's talk a little about design. So if you look at it here, you can see it is a pretty, for want of a better term, basic SUV shape. It's a pretty basic design, but there's a lot going on that makes the simple more complicated than it looks. We'll start with just the roofline. You can see the roofline looks like it dips down as it goes back. In reality, it does not. If there's any dipping, it's very minute. It's the way that the top edge opens that creates that downward dip look. Also, there is a simple body line along the belt there, fades in at the front, fades out at the back, and then after that it looks like there's almost nothing except for that crease in the door, but there are a bunch of little body lines happening. So as I step in, give you an idea of perspective, it is a large SUV, as I said. This body line here, which I was talking about, fades in right about here and runs along, creating that belt line across there and a light shelf, and then fades out right back here. Below that, you have this crease here, which fades in right after the front wheel well, runs along, gets thicker, and then fades out right there. Those look like the only lines happening, but if you look very closely, you'll see other lines. There's one about here and about here and about here. These little bone lines underneath here that are part of this curve are creating a little bit of light refraction, and that gives the body a lot more activity than it would have otherwise. It's very, very subtle. And then you just look at the rest of it, you can see fenders are fairly large. It's an SUV, you want it to feel beefy, so fenders are fairly large. Hood is relatively high to indicate that there is a large engine underneath, but I will say from the driver's position, it's very easy to see where the edges of your driving are. So it's very easy to figure this corner here for maneuvering in a tight parking lot, that sort of thing. Really nicely done. Now I will say the Germans have a penchant for big fat tires. They love these tires that, I don't know, to me they look like drag strip tires from behind. They're hugely wide. We'll see it a little bit when we go back there to look at the working end. But these tires are gigantic. The wheels are 22-inch. Beautiful look though. I love the look of these wheels. I love the feel of them. And of course the fender flare, which adds a little bit more to what's going on with the vehicle. Now if you get into the AMG variants, so you get into the, I believe they're a 63, 53, 63. If you get into those, then you will see a little more happening on those wheels. The brakes will be a lot more prominent, and you'll also see a little more happening as far as these flares and the spoiler on that rear roof rack, or rear roof line back there. Otherwise, this is what you got. Now, this is not a functional roof rack up here, but you can get one. This has a panoramic sunroof on the inside, and then the sunroof itself is hugely wide. So, nice look overall. It's deceptively simple, which is a hallmark of a luxury vehicle. The look is deceptively simple and minimalist. Let's go around the back and have a look there, and then we'll get inside it. So on the back here, before we open the hatch, I want you to look at what's happening across here. As far as this goes, it's pretty flat, but because of the curvature of the glass this way, and also this little bump out right here, it has kind of a curved look to it from the side profile, if you saw that. Also, I was pointing out those tires. They're hugely wide. It's just mind-boggling how big the tires are. Dual exhaust. It's not a true dual exhaust, but it does exhaust on both sides. It's not twice pipes coming up. So there's the back of it. Let's open up the hatch. There is some stuff inside, so maybe you'll get an idea of how much room there is. This is the cargo cover. I had to take it off and leave it behind while we were on our trip because we had these chairs plus our stuff stacked back here. Not a whole ton of cargo room when the third row is deployed, but it is still very usable. Like I said, there were 6 of us. We got enough stuff in here for the 6 of us to survive, to be you know, with clean clothes and everything else for a 3-day trip. So nicely done there. There's some tie downs in the corners. These seats fold down. These head racks, if I can find the button right there, they fold down out of the way. You have buttons on either side to electrically fold these seats in, so that's kind of useful. So folding that down, hopefully you get a little perspective on how far the cargo area goes when you're just using the second row. Also should point out, the buttons on this side run the third row, the buttons on that side run the second row. They're labeled as 2 and 3, so you can tell. But that's cool because it gives you access from back here to fold everything down if you want it all out of the way. So kind of neat, interesting and neat that they would have that. Underneath here is a spare tire. Not a whole lot of extra storage, just basically a big spare tire and a couple of emergency tools. So there's that. Let's go get inside it because that's really where the action happens on this. So the back door is open to almost a full 90 degrees, making entry and exit really easy. You can see here that I am sitting in a not terribly comfortable position, but I can fix that because I have full control of the seating. I can these captain's chairs can tilt, recline, the headrest can move up and down, all that stuff. Very, very nice. Longer on the bottom than most vehicles you get into the back of. I have plenty of leg room. This is set for me at 6'3". Plus, because I turned the vehicle off, it moved back to make getting out easier. So I would have another inch beyond what I have right now in leg room. You can see where this seat is. It's about equal to that. Beautiful, beautiful interior. It's black, which I don't like a lot of black, but it's offset with like the brushed aluminum of the Burmester stereo and this faux leather that they have. It might be real leather. It's Mercedes. Anyway, on the door inlays. Also, this has full climate control because this is tri-zone in here. So you have climate control back here. These are also heated seats back here. Lots of little things. There's cup holders right here, a regular sized one and a smaller one for like your energy drink. Also, these seats here have a button on the top in the corner that allows it to be folded forward to get into the third row. That button can be operated from either right here or back in that third row. In fact, let's fold this seat forward, show you how access to the third row is. I lied, there's no button. So to gain access to the third row, you can do this and fold this seat down using this red right here. You can use the buttons on the door, or you can go between the seats and climb through. I'll show you photos of the third row. It's really not realistic for somebody my size to get back there. I'm 6'3" and old. So up here in the front, wonderful layout, beautiful to drive this. It feels really good to drive. I love driving this. You have two large screens here. This half is the driver information and this half is infotainment. This does have the latest MBUX, so you can talk to it rather than just you know, having to use a touch screen or use the touchpad down here or something to control everything. Hey Mercedes,
How can I help?
tell me a joke.
Sorry, my engineers were German.
Relatively easy layout for where all the controls are. You have lots of seating controls for comfort, you know, to move yourself around. Beautiful brushed aluminum pedals down on the floor. They just look really good in this. Also, this has all kinds of controls on the steering wheel. Takes a minute to get used to them because they are not quite the same as every other vehicle. These little tiny touch pads on the top in particular take a little work to understand functionality, but you quickly get the idea. The right hand side runs infotainment, left hand side runs the driver information. You have paddle shifters if you want them. You have drive controls and other stuff here, as well as parking cameras and access to other things like that. There's a volume knob here, there's a volume knob here, and both of them can be pushed to mute. You have your telephone control over here, you have your voice control for the infotainment over here, and you have all of your driver information and cruise control and adaptive cruise stuff over here. So really not a whole lot of complaints. One thing I didn't like was the distance settings for the adaptive cruise. It tends to get oversensitive to what's happening in the lane next to you rather than in your lane if you set the distance very far. The only time I didn't have that problem was when I had it sucked all the way up to Colorado tailgating mode, is what I like to call it, the closest setting you can get, which is a little bit annoying. You know, if there's a curve in the highway and it senses the vehicle up there and starts slowing down, that's really annoying. Also, there is a toggle, there is a setting you can use in the driver information screens to turn it off, but by default the cruise control will read traffic signs, will read the speed limit signs, and will adjust to that just by default. That's also kind of annoying because it can seem kind of abrupt and sometimes it misreads the sign. So, you know, there is a toggle to find it and turn it off, but by default it will be there. So if you suddenly go from, you know, 70 to 55 and you don't know why, that's probably the reason. Anyway, pretty nice up here. You have heated and cooled seats. You have a great stereo. The Burmester stereo is beautiful in this, and just nicely laid out and a nice feeling cabin. Head-up display is really good, and yeah, just beautifully done because it's Mercedes. So there you have it. That is the Mercedes GLS. This in particular is the 450. You can go up the ladder if you want, get more power, whatever. But this to me is beautifully outfitted. Now there is a price for that outfit. This one, as we looked at it right here, is about $94,000 with delivery. You can get it slightly cheaper than that if you drop some of the amenities that are on this, and then you can go a lot higher than that if you go up that ladder. The Maybach is pretty close to around $200,000. That's pretty much the top end. So yeah, you're gonna pay if you want something like this. But if you're in the market for something like this is beautifully done. Drives wonderfully. In fact, it drives smaller than it is. It's a lot more maneuverable than you would think. I was able to do a full U-turn inside of just a standard, you know, 2-lane regular everyday street. So way more maneuverable than you would assume. Also just smooth and always competent. So wonderful, wonderful SUV here. That's what I got. This has been Aaron, 2022 Mercedes-Benz GLS. Talk to you again soon.
Subscribe.